North Carolina, and I don't know what the weather is in Oregon, but I'm so excited that you're joining us today. I am here with Omuugn, and today we are covering from the Insights and Wisdom of Omuugn, which is the tome that we're reading today. We are talking about a really important topic, which is on environment. And this is how you get to create and set the stage of the environment that you live in so that everything in your domino effect life that comes after that is based on what you set up. So the environment that we live in is really important. And we are looking today on pages from 199 to 204. And so I'm going to ask you to join us if you have not already. Pick up your copy of the Insights and Wisdom of Omuugn. This is volume 1 of volume 2. There are 2 in this series. And we are breaking this down week by week to specify the different topics that are in here on leadership and parenthood and how to be the best version of yourself. And like I say, I am here with Omuugn. And so as we unpack this, we're going to learn all the insights about how you can live the best version of your life. So please help me welcome Omuugn. How are you today?
Good morning. I'm doing well. It's overcast and rainy in eastern Oregon, but it's a good day. We need a little rain every now and then.
Well,
Hopefully it
from
will snow in the mountains.
well, from a gardener's perspective, every time it rains, it's a gift from above where you're like, hey, free water for the plants.
It's true.
And I would like to say also hello to our users. We've got a user this morning from Facebook that says, good, beautiful morning. Don't know where you're calling from, but we are so glad that you've joined us. So thanks for joining us. And if you have comments, please jump in today, add those. We will try to answer your questions as we go. Again, today we are talking about environment. So I want to ask from the top, if you'll share with us about environment and what was it that made you add this to your book of insights?
Well, I was studying one day. I go through the scriptures and the wisdom literature of many different countries, and uh, I ran across a concept that said that we live in a world of spaces and kingdoms. And that really grabbed a hold of me. And it says that every space has a kingdom and every kingdom has a space. And I got thinking about that, and I realized that a lot of times we talk about things generally and we don't really get down into the specifics. But if you define what a space is, really an environment, that's why it's critical to today's topic. An environment is an area of your life that kind of defines where you are, how you are, what's going on in your reality. And then inside of that space, there's a structure. And that structure can be all kinds of different things. We'll talk about some of those structures. But if you change the structure in a space or in an environment, you actually change the environment. And so we're not relegated to the environment that maybe we were born into or where we live or different kinds of environments. There are many, many different kinds of environments. When you start thinking in terms of environments, all different kinds of things come to mind. For example, we think of our home environment with our family and maybe our yard and maybe different rooms in our house or closets or drawers in our bedrooms. We have work environments. When you go to work, you're around different people and you have different kinds of equipment, and the work environment is different. There's also an environment in the communities where we live. For example, we have a group of concerned citizens in I call it a village. We're really quite small and rural. And so this committee determines what they want our village to be in the future. And for example, I think we have one stop sign in our village, and we don't have any traffic lights. And they don't want neon signs to come into our village. They want the village to be sort of, well, it's composed of ranchers and farm kinds of people. and they want to keep that atmosphere. They don't want a city atmosphere at all. And so they're very particular about letting things come into the environment that would paint a different picture than the one they want to live in.
So it's like an HOA, but instead of for the homeowners association for the neighborhood, it's for the whole town.
Well, it would almost be like an HOA because our village isn't much bigger than a neighborhood. But anyway, that's the idea. And we have the ability, we have the creative, whatever you want to call it, to actually create the environment that we want to live in. And the people in my village have accepted that idea to the degree that that's what we want to do. And we have a council that oversees that. This is how we want to live. This is what we want to be taught in our school system. This is the laws that we want to obey.
Well, let me ask you a question about that because that's interesting. You're talking about a collective group of people coming together to create or to enforce an environment. And there are a lot of people in the world that I live in that will sit back, and I'm going to call them armchair participants, because they will complain about the society and the things that are happening and the rules and the obligations and the fees and all the things. And they don't go to the meetings. They don't have a voice. They don't vote for the different things on the table, like the neon signs or the stoplights or what have you in the town. And these are metaphorical to our situation, but they don't vote, they don't participate, and they sit there and they just complain. So how involved does one need to be in order to create the environment that they live in, other than just complaining and watching it go by? Do you think that we need to be active? And if so, how?
Well, in our community, we have community meetings once a month. And in those community meetings, if you have an opinion about something, then you can bring that to the meeting. And one of the opinions in one of the meetings was that we should have a group of people who kind of oversee businesses and things that are happening in our community, because we want to maintain the quality of life that we really enjoy. For example, several years ago, there was a famous movie actor who I will not mention by name. He also had a famous movie actress wife, and they came to our village and they thought it was really quaint. And right above our village is a big mountain range and covered with snow. And they thought this would be a wonderful place to have a ski resort. We could make this into a town like Vail, Colorado, or one of those famous ones. And our village people on this committee said, we don't want anything like that to develop in this area. So they just flat out would not let them come in with their idea of making our town a tourist attraction with a big ski lodge. So they made it available to everyone in our community to participate and to voice that opinion. There were people who went around door to door with surveys and had people sign petitions and said, no, we want to stay pristine and in nature, and we want to maintain the quality of life that we enjoy in this rural area with our animals and our farms. And it's just an agriculturally based community. So I would assume that those kinds of things are available to you wherever you are. And if you showed up to your community meetings, I know every community has them. If they don't have them regularly, they'll have them quarterly. And some of your representatives from Congress will come to some of those meetings, and you can make your wishes known. But very few people actually go to those kinds of meetings. They would rather be entertained at home doing something else. But if you're concerned about the quality of your life and things that are happening in your community, then that's not a spectator sport. That's something that you can really participate in. You can be a participant in those activities. And
Let's
that's on
back
the
up for a step because, well, and I, not to interrupt you, I apologize, but let's back up for a step and go all the way back to when you were raising a family. You decided for some reason, and there may have been very multiple reasons, but you decided that you were going to homeschool your family. And so instead of just changing the community around you, you started controlling and changing the environment that you were in charge of, which was your own home. Do you think that we need to start in our own homes first before we go out, or start outward and go in? Is there a difference, or does it matter?
Well, I think it can be concurrently approached. We already live in a community. We need to identify with that. But at the same time, first of all, it all starts with yourself. You need to be the kind of person that you want to be. You want to be the environment that you want to be in. You're the one that has to live with yourself throughout your entire life. And if you're not really pleased with yourself, if you don't love yourself, if you don't enjoy being around yourself, then everything else breaks down.
Can we stop for a second? I want to repeat that because I don't want it to slip away. You just said, and correct me if I'm wrong, I want to make sure I get this right, that you need to become the person that you are pleased with. I've never heard that before, and I've never heard it presented that way. And I think many of us are, I don't know, acceptance of ourselves, like, yeah, we're okay. But pleased with yourself is a whole new level of, oh my goodness, I can do a little bit better than I did yesterday.
Well, there's always something that we can do. For example, these new books of mine that just came out. I actually wrote those books over time, gathering information my entire life. And at some point, you have to decide, is this really who I am? Uh, I want what I've learned to be available to my children and to my grandchildren, and maybe to others who have similar interests. And so at some point in time, I had to step out of my comfort zone and say, yeah, I will take this information. I will actually do something with it. That will make me more pleased with myself, because it's something that I want to do to leave as a legacy to my family and to others. And so at some point, you have to decide who you are, what you want to be, and what is the best version of yourself. And
And
that
for
should
those
be
of
the
you that are just joining us, I do want to highlight this before we move on to the next topic. These are the books that he wrote, the book 1 and book 2 of the Insights and Wisdom of Omuugn, and those are for adults. Those are the skills that you need to be a better leader, a better parent, a better version of yourself. And then for the children's books, we have Fearless Phil. My green screen here is eating up half the book, but actually, if you buy it, you get the whole book without the ed up version. And then also the Giant, which are both two amazing stories. One focuses on the anything is possible concept, and the other one is being the best version of yourself and accepting yourself as you are while you're growing. So I love the concepts, but this has not only made me very pleased with Omuugn, but we're also watching him right now as these ideas are coming together, how they're impacting his children, his grandchildren, and the world around him. So thank you for supplying the world with those. I want to thank you for that.
well, yeah, and you have to kind of realize at some point what your goals are. You should have long-term goals, and you should have short-term goals, and you should have some sense of a purpose of why you're alive and why you're in the position that you're in. Uh, so you start with yourself. And if you value yourself, if you're pleased with yourself, if you're working on yourself, that's always a good place to start. And then that goes into your family. How do I want my family to be? What kind of a family do I want? What principles, traits, and characteristics do I need to teach my children so that they become uh, competent adults and they're able to interface with the society that we live in today, which, by the way, is very challenging.
Speaking
And
of
then,
challenging, we have a Facebook user that says it's systematic. Once you start a change inside or on an inner scale, it immediately creates an environment for you that bleeds into other areas of your life. Change one thing and everything is affected.
that's exactly right. As we were mentioning, if you take a structure that is inside of an environment and you change it, you change the environment. And if you can also change the environment, and that will change the structures that are inside of it so that it works both ways. But you don't have to live in a place that you're not pleased with. You can always do something to better your environment, to better yourself, to better your family, or whatever it is you're looking at. For example, we can go beyond our community to our county. What kind of county leaders, what is their philosophy? What is their platform that kind of directs how your county goes? That will impact things like building codes and how free you are to express yourself and all different kinds of things. And then there's the state level. You should be involved on the state level to make sure that the people who govern you reflect your values. Right now, there's a turmoil in my state because our state leaders, who are basically in Portland over on the West Coast, are very, very liberal. And they are the open cities for illegal immigrants, and they are for getting rid of the police, and they are for all different kinds of things that are very, very liberal. And over in the area of the state where I live, it's very, very conservative. And so there's a clash. There's such a clash between those two ideas that there's, I think, 5 counties in Eastern Oregon that have petitioned to secede from the state of Oregon and join the state of Idaho and actually become part of Idaho instead of Oregon.
Oh my
Because,
goodness. I'm seeing right now, and this is a really interesting time that we live in because we're seeing things right now that are coming to the light that are really polarizing. And I'm going to say, I think since the pandemic, things have become more, even more so, where people are like, hey, wait a second, I have a voice and I'm going to share my voice. And they have really started, I'm going to say, coming out of the woodwork to express these feelings. We've seen all kinds of things from riots and, petitions, like you said. And I'm seeing it now in places we've never seen it before.
oh,
People
we
are
see it
not as
everywhere now.
yeah,
In
people are
fact,
not as peaceful as they once were.
one of the latest surveys or polls that was taken, there are only 17% of the people who think our country is moving in the right direction.
Mm.
And so that's 83%, over 8 out of every 10 people who are dissatisfied with our government and the direction that it's going. So there has to be something that we can do about that that's very, very productive. Walking around carrying a sign, I don't know that that's really productive. I
Mm.
think we need to actually contact our county representatives, our state representatives. We need to get a hold of our congressional representatives in Congress and say, we have these policies going on. Nobody likes those policies. And I notice that you're voting for them. If you vote for those policies, we will no longer support you. We are going to vote you out of office. So,
It's funny that you bring that up because as I was coming back from the gym, there are just rows of signs that are littered the road right now because right now it's voting time and everybody's saying, vote against this policy, vote against that policy, vote for me, vote for this, vote for that. And you're just bombarded with like hundreds of signs that line the whole roadways coming back from the gym. And I'm just like, whoa, this is vote overwhelm. it's, it's everybody now trying to say, hey, now's the time to jump out and make a difference. Can we flip the script for a second and talk about the world that we live in terms of medical and health issues? Because we're going through something very similar to what you just mentioned on a political scale, but also with medical and health. Right now, there is an epidemic in the world that we live in that is all about medicine and prescription medicines. And we have people that are overdosing all the time because they're addicted to painkillers, because instead of living a life of health, the environment that they've created in is one of just masking pain. We're not actually addressing the pain. We're not resolving the issues. We're not choosing to live a healthier life. We have people that are just going to the doctor saying, hey, make the pain go away, just numb it, make it disappear. And that's the environment. And right now there's this huge epidemic that has hit our society, and people are dying right and left from drug overdoses. Can you address what we can do on a personal level to start addressing and changing our own environment in terms of health and wellness?
Oh yeah, as you mentioned, there are things happening in every sector of our environment. For example, health and wellness is definitely one of them. Nutrition is one of them. Illegal immigration is one of them. It goes on and on and on and on and on. Every issue is a polarizing issue. And the polarization that's taking place, as I say, most people are not pleased with that.
Mhm.
And so we need to take steps that are very dramatic. For example, there was I hate to advertise or non-advertise for people, but Bud Light took a position on the transgender issue.
Mm.
And nobody, when I say nobody, I mean the vast majority of people were offended by the approach that they took. And so what they did to display their displeasure at that choice, they stopped buying the product. And because of the way this company was advertising their product, they lost literally billions of dollars.
Well, what's interesting about the Bud Light, since we're talking about the Bud Light ad campaign, there are advertising mishaps. And sometimes it's a creative choice where somebody will make a choice and say, hey, let's see if this works. And they're reaching out to a particular audience. But I myself have boycotted companies because of their advertising missteps. Not just for Bud Light, but there's a chain that is where I live, and I won't say their name, but they had a they had a weird ad campaign that included you open your oven and there was a dead rat inside. And I'm like, what on earth? And it was just a weird advertising mishap. But because of that one visual image, I've never eaten there again. And I'm going to call that a colossal fail because as a customer, they lost me for life. It was just a weird ad campaign that was a complete flop. There's another one that was just super creepy. And it was a national, in fact, an international hamburger chain, and they had a creepy ad that I thought was inappropriate. And it was so creepy that my husband, when he saw that ad, he said, right now, between you and me, we never eat at that chain again. And we boycotted it just in our own family because it was a creepy and what we called inappropriate ad that should have been on television. We're like that has no place. We don't know how that got past the advertising agency. Bud Light, unfortunately, since you mentioned their name, they felt that on a colossal scale. And so whether people know it or not, yeah, the environment that you create does affect not just your company, but everybody around you. It's an interesting thing to be aware of.
And the real point in the issue is that there are things that we can do that directly impact the change we want to see take place. For example, when you don't buy a product anymore, it impacts their business. It's a money thing. And when you don't buy products, that company is not going to do as well. And if you can spread the word, for example, you have a lot of contacts on social media. Social media, the internet is its own environment now.
Mm.
And you can greatly impact that environment with your direct approach, and you put it out to all of the people that follow you and all the people that follow whatever program it is. All of a sudden a whole bunch of people withdraw their money or their support for something, and that has a great impact on people. So those are things that we can do, and we need to do things that are significant. Making a lot of noise in the street and throwing rocks at buildings and setting buildings on fire, that makes your environment worse. Whatever problem you had before, now you have two problems or more. And so those kinds of things are ridiculous. But
The
if
less
you,
I'm sorry.
well, no, I was just going to say, you want to do things that are really positive and that have an effect. You don't want to just create a bunch of chaos and noise because that doesn't really accomplish anything. So do things that are really specifically targeted to what you're trying to accomplish.
The less violent version of that, going back to social media, is when you jump on social media and you say something like what we were just talking about, excuse me, where you say, don't shop at this particular company or buy from this particular vendor because of, and then you give your reasons. And on social media, there are influencers, and those influencers can take down companies literally overnight because of their opinions with a particular brand. Now, I am in the cleaning end of the world, and so we have a Facebook group that has 28,000 vetted cleaning business owners. And we have a rule inside our group. This is not the platform to you for you to come and bring your anxieties, because there are a lot of people that have software, or they have advertising agencies, or they have different solutions for cleaning business owners. And if you've had a bad experience with one of those, do not come and puke that into this group, because it's not fair to all the 28,000 other business owners that might be their customers. And so we're going to ask you first, out of respect and out of controlling your own environmental situation, to go to the customer service department of that company and try to air your dirty laundry with them and have them help you resolve it, instead of you just coming to our group and puking it and possibly ruining an entire business that has worked for years to come up with a scenario that is supportive to small businesses. And so any chance that we see where somebody's coming in our group and they're trying to shame a business, we don't really want that. And so our environment is, we want everybody to speak for themselves. And so if a business has a chance to thrive, please work it out with the business, between you and them, because this might be an isolated incident, not a nationwide, company-wide, or worldwide issue. And so we've tried to control that environment by letting people deal one-on-one with their issues, instead of ruining it for everyone.
Well, that point that you make is the very point that we're trying to make, is that if you have an environment, you can control that environment, and you can create a structure inside of your environment to regulate how your environment operates. And you should always be looking at your environment, or the environment that you're in, and asking yourself this question: how can I make this environment better than it is? How can I make this environment more to what I would prefer?
Mhm.
And you should have an idea of how you prefer things to be. One of the things that is happening in our world today is in the world of entertainment. Um, there's a lot of the LBGTQXYZ movement and the woke movement. And I think that everyone agrees that everyone has a right, and that we should accept people for who they are, but we don't have to advertise them. We don't have to draw their lifestyle into our lifestyle. We have the right to create our own lifestyle. We should respect other people and treat them with kindness and with respect, but we don't have to take their issues and put them in our face all of the time. And this is what Disney is going through right now. Disney has started to make a lot of films that have content that are offensive to a lot of people. And so there's a great big movement away from Disney. A lot of parents don't want their children to watch Disney anymore. And Disney used to be the children's channel. That's where you would have you'd feel safe if your children were watching TV and you turned on the Disney Channel.
There's nothing safe on TV anymore. I turned on the TV the other day. I didn't turn on. My husband was watching TV. I happened to walk through the room, and there was, I kid you not, it's some kind of a game show or a reality show or something, where people are acting on their own accord. This is not a scripted show as we know it. And there was a grown adult that turned around and said to another grown adult, "I'll show you who I am." And they turned around and they slapped that person across the face. And then they zoomed in for the reaction shot of the person that got slapped. And I thought to myself, oh my goodness, I just walked through the room, and this is being broadcast on television. And what I just saw in this one moment, just this one little tiny isolated clip, and I didn't see the whole thing. I just saw this one isolated clip. But just like that, I saw a grown adult disrespect another person as if that was okay. And they turned around and they walked off like, I got the last laugh, kind of a thing. And I thought, okay, in the world that I live in, that is grounds for being arrested. That's inappropriate behavior. And not only that, but because of who you are, you just disrespected. And I went through a whole bunch of things in my head. You disrespected your race. You disrespected the gender that you represent. You disrespected the particular age demographic. You disrespected the audience that you are speaking to. You disrespected the audience that's watching you right now. There are like 5 or 6 things that I'm like, how can this be okay? And I sat there and I said, this is not okay. This is not okay in my home. And I turned around and I walked out. I'm not going to watch this kind of whatever this is, where we're going to disrespect the human race right in front of what? National public television? There's got to be somebody that's watching this program and they think somewhere, oh, that's how we treat other adults. This is how we treat other humans. Let me check. No, it is not. No, it is not. That is not okay. That is not okay. And how somehow it got on television and it wasn't bleeped out, or they didn't stop that from being broadcast. That went through a whole chain of people. And then somewhere on the production team said, oh, hey, this makes for great television. Let's air this on television and see what it does for ratings. Someone approved that to go on the air and they broadcast it as if it was okay. Not
Well,
okay.
yeah, a lot of the programs, they do go by ratings. And there was a controversy here in the last several years about some of the news channels that were so biased in the way they presented the news that people have stopped watching those channels.
Mm,
And because of their approach and because of their biases, some of those channels are actually, they've been forced to close down,
mm.
and it's ruined their ratings. So, like you say, if you don't like something, don't watch it. Don't be part of the ratings that would support something that you don't approve of. Don't support things like Disney if they're going to show things to children that are inappropriate. Don't buy products. If you go into the grocery store to buy food, you find food that is genetically modified. Do you want your food to be genetically modified? I don't. I don't want my family to eat genetically modified food. We're not talking about hybrids where you have different kinds of tomatoes and you make different kinds of fruit or vegetables grow. We're talking about taking like bat DNA or rat DNA and very different structures and putting them into the food products to give them totally different characteristics. That's not okay with me.
Well, I
Uh,
don't know about that, but that's not okay with me either.
no, and whenever you see a food that is genetically modified, that's kind of what you're exposing yourself to. Things that you have no idea what's going on in the background. For myself, I like to know what I'm eating. If I'm going to eat something, uh, here a while back, there was this big thing about being vaccinated. I'm not against vaccinations per se, but I want to know what's in the serum that they're going to put into my body. And a nurse asked me one time during a physical checkup, would you like to have this shot while you're here? And I said, what's in the shot? And she says, well, I don't really know. And I said, well, I don't either. So why would I want you to put something into my body and you don't know what it is and I don't either? That doesn't make any sense to me. I don't know why people are spraying things into our atmosphere.
Mm.
Is it to change the weather? Is it for climate warming or whatever the reason might be? The fact is, I don't want people to put things in my air. I
Well,
don't even like pollutants in my air.
a smaller version of that is, as a house cleaner, we go inside people's homes, and they have all these little plugins that you plug in, and it makes the room smell nice or whatever. You walk by and it squirts a smell at you, and you're like, "Whoa, okay, where'd that come from?" But for the same reasons, I started noticing after a period of time with people spraying, they have like these little sprays next to their toilets and things like this, the sprays in the air, and you'd walk in, and all of a sudden my eyes would just turn red and my nose clogs up. And I'm like, "Oh my goodness, I just walked into what I feel like is a toxic environment." And I would literally go to people's homes, and it wasn't all homes, but there were a couple of homes that I would go in to clean. And when I would come out of that home after I had cleaned it, I would physically feel sick. And I'm like, I don't know what is inside that home, but it's just the air or something in that home has made me physically ill. And I mean, I hate to say that because we want to be respectful of all mankind and we want to help people upgrade their environments. But there were some environments I came out of that I literally and physically felt sick. And I'd have to go home and I'd have to try to sleep it off. I'm like, oh, I feel so bad.
Yeah, I won't name the chain, but there is a fast food chain that serves hamburgers, and their hamburgers and their French fries really smell good. I mean,
Mm,
when you go by, you want to stop and get one. And I was reading an article, and I'm not saying that all the articles that you read are accurate either. You have to be really careful about your information. But there are over 30 chemicals that they put into their process to make the hamburgers and the French fries smell so enticing that you would want to buy them and eat them.
mm.
So you're eating 30 chemicals that you don't know what they are. And to me, that's kind of a scary place to be.
S-
It's
s- Speaking of which, I was listening to a podcast a couple months ago, and it was Dr. Mindy Peltz. She spent about 30 years talking and researching and studying and prophesying the intermittent fasting concept. And she went really deep into the reasons why. And her reasons were so compelling. And I was talking about changing your environment from within that I was like, okay, I'm going to do that. And one of the things that she recommended, because I don't know enough about nutrition to know what to give up and what to, hang on to. But she said, I'll make it simple for you. Anything in a bag, a box, or a can has preservatives in it. You talk about the 30 chemicals. I was like, that's easy. I can go remove anything in a bag, a box, or a can. So I'm going to try this for 30 days. Okay, so for 30 days, I documented my progress every single day, and I did not eat anything that came in a bag, a box, or a can. You would not believe the transformation that I personally felt in that 30-day window. I lost 21 pounds, and I went from being hungry every few hours, I need some food, to feeling like I feel fantastic and I feel great without adding anything extra to my diet. And I was doing the intermittent fasting, but when I was eating, nothing from a bag, a box, or a can. And the food that I was eating was like baked sweet potatoes with no salt and nothing on it. It's just natural vegetables and things that God gave us in the form God gave them to us. Fresh fruits and vegetables. And I was like, this tastes so good. It's like it reset my taste buds, it reset my sense of smell, it reset my energy levels. I was like, whoa, this is talk about changing your environment from inside out. That was one of the most amazing things I have ever seen because I saw it in real time. And every day as I was tracking my progress, I rated how do I feel on a scale of 1 to 10. And like when I started, I was like, man, I feel like a 2 or a 3 today. I've got nothing to lose because I can't possibly feel any worse. And by about day 4 or 5, I was like, man, I feel like a 10. Like, is this just a phase I'm going through and then it's going to like taper off and I'm going to feel bad again because I gave up everything? I did not. I just felt better every day. And I'm like, whoa, I'm on a roll here.
and the point that you bring up is really an important one. And that is we're not trapped in environments. We're not victims. We have the ability and the power at any given time to look at our environment and say, I'm not going to buy packaged things anymore. I'm going to buy fresh fruits and vegetables and things that are nutritious. I'm not going to use these chemicals or these medications or whatever it might be. If you switch your medications around, you do need to consult with your doctor, and you need to do it wisely. Uh, but there are a lot of natural things that will replace a lot of the medications that we're on, and it will do it in such a way that you have no side effects
And
and you
I'm
don't
glad
have
you brought
adverse
that up.
effects.
I should mention while I was talking about changing my lifestyle, I had just had my annual checkup with my doctor. And my doctor said to me, because I'm in menopause, oh, you've gained all this extra weight. That's normal. You'll learn to live with it. And I said, I'm not going to learn to live with it. I'm going to figure out why my body is reacting so differently. So I contacted my doctor back and I said, hey, this is the program that I'm going to go on. And we have what's called my chart where I can leave notes in there. I said, can I keep you posted on my progress just so you know what I'm doing? So I did get clearance from my doctor. My doctor was going through the process day by day, reading the notes and leaving comments as well. So I wasn't just going rogue and experimenting. But like Omuugn says, if you are experimenting with your health and your diet and your nutrition and your medicines, do keep your doctor in the loop so that there are no surprises. I'm glad you brought that up.
Yeah, there. This is such really your environment is such an exciting topic that we could go on in a lot of different directions. But there are a couple of things that are really critically important that I would like to bring up. One of them is that our mind is an environment. And a lot of people are not as aware of how their mind operates as they should be. They let a lot of things into their minds without a lot of filters. And we should determine what kind of a mind we want. Do we want to be able to memorize things or to speed read or to control whether or not we have Alzheimer's or dementia? Is that possible? Yes, it is. And there are ways that you can live so that your mind is clear and constructive, and it's a powerful tool. And we need to have filters that we don't want garbage to come into our mind. We don't want to think about negative things and things that will make us depressed and have negative reactions. We want to be excited about life and enjoy life. And it starts with our mind and how we think and what we think about. So we need to look at our mind as an environment that we want to control and structure as we really desire it to be. Another one is the music that we listen to. A lot of people listen to music and they'll say, well, I like that music. Well, the reason that you like that music is because that's your vibrational level. And you need to ask yourself the question, is this music, does it really add to who I am? Does it uplift me? Does it strengthen my resolve to be a better person? Is the music that I listen to actually taking me where I want to go? Or do I listen to things that don't have good messages? I just like the, a lot of the music is not really harmonious. It's not really in sync with musical principles that have been time tested over the centuries. Pure tones and beautiful tones have an impact on our physical bodies and on our mental aspect. So we want to listen to things that really uplift us. And there's a science called cymatics, where you can take sand and put it on a disc and play music, and the vibrations of the music will create designs and patterns in the sand. And if you play beautiful music, it will create mandalas that are geometrically proportionate and beautiful. It's kind of like this structure of snowflakes. And if you play certain kinds of music that there's a lot of discord and chaos in the music, that's the way the sand is patterned. It really does have an impact on our structure, the kind of music that we listen to, the books that we read. Another area that's really important in our environment is our habits. Sometimes we have habits that we're really not aware of. We do, when you put your pants on, you always put your left leg in first and then your right leg. And you have certain ways of doing things that become so automatic that you don't really consciously look at your habits. Do you react to things, or do you proactively determine how you're going to respond to things? Sometimes reacting becomes just a habit. And sometimes our habits don't really support the kind of person that we want to be. Sometimes our habits are negative habits. Sometimes, not even sometimes, we all have false beliefs that either come through traditions or culture or society or how we've been schooled or raised or whatever it might be. There are things that are part of our programming that are not in harmony with universal laws and foundational principles. And unless we stop and look at things and say, is this really something that is making me a better person? I have a habit of reacting to things.
We have a comment here. Mountain Call Outdoors and Crafts says, all music was tuned in the 40s to be disharmonious to the human ear. Not conspiracy theory research has proven it. There's a systematic campaign going around the world to do it. And so this is somebody commenting on the music that was created to be in discord. I don't know what, to inspire us to live discordant lives.
Well, that's a good point. And on that specific point, there's actually a way that music goes through the dimensions. It's a sacred geometric pattern. And for example, your A should be turned to 432 hertz. And in the modern music today, music is tuned to 440 hertz. So it
Hmm.
takes you into a different range and frequency of music. So even if you have a pure tone, it's the wrong tone, or it's not a true tone. So we need to learn what the golden mean and solfeggio frequencies and crystal spirals and all of those things that bring things together and unify them. We need to understand those kinds of principles. We live
So
in a
I don't understand the principles, but I heard you talking a couple of weeks ago on one of these programs about the frequencies and listening to frequencies as you sleep at night. So I said, well, again, and I love experimenting with your ideas because I have got nothing to lose and only everything to gain. So I decided on my smartphone, I would look up like a YouTube frequency program that went through the night. It was like 6 hours or 9 hours long or something, and I was playing it as I went to sleep at night, and I was audible enough that my husband also could hear it. So in the middle of the night, the tape ended, and it was just, I'm going to call them sounds because that wasn't like a song, but it was just sounds of a particular frequency. So in the middle of the night, he nudges me, wakes me up, and he's like, "Hey, wake up! The sounds ended. Can you turn it back on?" And I was like, "Whoa!" Unconsciously, he was listening to them and was so tuned in with them that when it stopped, it jolted him to awareness. And he's like, "It stopped. Can you make it happen again?" And I thought that was so interesting because he's a guy that will snore through the whole entire night and nothing wakes him up. But when the frequency ended, he was like, I want it back. And I was like, that is so interesting. And so the last couple of nights I've been experimenting with different frequencies. I went on ChatGPT and I asked ChatGPT, "Hey, do you know about the frequencies?" It was like, "I do." And I was like, "I don't. Tell me more." And so it made a list of all the different frequencies and what they were supposed to do. Then I was like, wait a second. I can be creative here and I can try, there are healing frequencies and there are frequencies that will bring you peace and frequencies that will put you in touch with your higher self and things like that. So I've been experimenting with the different frequencies to see if, I don't know, it makes me a better person. So thanks for sharing that with me because that was new for me.
yeah, there our mind is a real environment and we don't control it enough. Like the kind of music that you listen to and the words that you speak and all kinds of things. It's something that we really need to be aware of, and that we're not victims. We're not enmeshed in an environment that traps us. We can recreate our environment anytime we choose to do that. And
Well,
it's exciting.
when we were talking about the frequencies, I brought my phone because it was playing at one of these long frequencies. I say it long, it was lasting 11 hours or something. I brought my smartphone with me into my office in the morning and I just left it on. I didn't turn it off. And as I sat at my computer, because it's still playing in the background, and I think it was one on creativity, I sat there for about an hour before I went to the gym in the morning. And it was interesting because the frequency was playing in the background, still going on in my office now, and it was interesting because as I was driving to the gym, I was thinking, I think playing the frequency in the background while I was working actually made me more productive because during that 1 hour, I got so much done. And I was thinking, was I more rested? Was it something that I ate? Like what made me more productive today? And then I was like, I wonder if it's playing the frequency on my phone during that one extra hour because I usually didn't have it on. When you talk about controlling your environments, it was a very interesting experiment.
Oh yeah, we can do something about. In fact, the message today is that there are many, many, many different kinds of environments in which we find ourselves. There are external environments, there are internal environments, and we actually can control all of them. For
Mhm.
example, a relationship is an environment. And how you interact with other people, you can put structures in that relationship, how far apart you are when you talk, how often you get together, the kinds of activities that you do together, the things that you talk about. There are all kinds of things that you can do to change the environment. We've talked about people like neighbors who come over and they want to get rid of all of their problems and all of their health issues and all of the things that we don't really want to hear about. We can change those environments, and we can do it tactfully and respectfully, but we can move people into a place where the conversations are more uplifting and positive, and we're talking about eternal principles and foundational things. And if people are not interested in that, they will leave, because you either want to improve or you don't. And if you're in an environment that's really pressing you to improve and make yourself better, if you don't want to do that, you're not going to stay in that environment. And so, yeah, we're in charge of everything. First of all, we need to identify the environment. If we don't specifically identify the environment that we're working with, we don't know what actual structures need to be in place in that environment to make the changes that we prefer, the changes that would bring us to our goals and objectives and maybe our purpose in life. Things
So
are
if
not
we were
going to
to
happen.
if we were to simplify that for our listeners and our viewers today, and we were going to give them an actionable series of steps, let's say that I have an environment at home that is negative, it's stressful, and it's full of anxiety, and I just keep repeating the same stuff over and over again every day. What are some simple steps I can do today? Number one, to become aware of what's happening, and then number two, to take steps to change my own environment.
Well, again, it begins with yourself. You need to sit down and say, what am I really trying to accomplish? Who am I really? What would be the best version of myself? And how can I take that into my family environment, or my family? If my kids are quarreling and fighting, or if I don't have a good communication with my husband or wife, what could I do to change that environment? So first of all, you have to be aware of the environments, and then you have to be very specific on the environment that you're working with. And you need to ask yourself some really serious questions. For example, how can I make this environment better? What I like to do is I'll walk out into my yard, and I will go into a place in my yard, and I will look around, and I will say, is this a space that I really want to be in? Is this the environment that uplifts me and that I enjoy being right here? And as I look around, I can always find something to improve. This should be done. This painting could be done. I could plant a shrub here, a tree here. I could do different things. My goal is to, wherever you are in my environment, you would feel at peace. You would feel the connection with nature. It's a place that you would just want to be because it would be uplifting. I have I have a neighbor who lives actually in a village by me, not the same village, but his entire yard is just junk. He collects junk. In fact, you can't see the ground at all in his yard. The the junk is like 3 or 4 feet tall, and he has a little trail that goes through the junk up to his door so that he can get into his house.
Mhm.
I mean, there are people that have that kind of, um, I don't know whether he's a slave to that environment or his habits, or there's something that makes him live in a way that would make me very nervous. When I go out into my yard, I like a clean and organized and peaceful environment.
Well, what I heard you
So
say is, and it's probably true for your neighbor as well. Your neighbor has a particular environment that sounds like maybe that is his space that makes him comfortable, but it sounds like he's drifting aimlessly through that space. And as things collect, they just kind of find their way to anywhere but his little trail. And it sounds like in your space, you're trying to every once in a while be aware of the space so that you're looking at it with new eyes, saying, okay, if I was going to redesign this space, or if I was going to upgrade it, or if I was going to make a change to it, what would I do? And when we look at something with new eyes, we then have choices because we are aware. And it's the drifting aimlessly through life that ends up with piles of stuff stacked 2 and 3 feet high inside your yard when maybe at one point every one of those items had a purpose in his life. And I don't know because I don't know your neighbor, but one of the things that I think is really interesting about what you said is I walk out into my yard and I look around. And I don't know if I got this from you, but I find myself often like standing in my garage and nothing in my hand. I'm not doing anything particularly. I'm just looking around like, is there anything that I want to change? Is there anything that I should change? Am I okay with everything as it is right here? If I were going to make a change, what would it be? And there are times I turn around and I'm going, nope, no changes. I'm good to go. But
Well,
I,
that's
I like
wonderful.
that. I like that not being aimless about your decisions.
Yeah, and like I say, you need to be aware of your habits. Usually people are not aware of their habits, but that's something that you can do that is really powerful. What do I do consistently in my mind, the way I think about things, or things that I do that are not beneficial, like collecting or hoarding things? If you recognize those things and you're aware of it, you can change them. You can say, oh, I'm going to be organized. And the availability of information to us on how to organize and how to do things better. We've never had a time in the history of the world where we have more access to relevant information. And so if you have a question about anything, you can find out the answer to it. And you need to decide in your own mind what you prefer. How do you want your life to play out? How do you want to respond in all of these different environments that you're enmeshed in? Every relationship. There's a comment here you were going to.
Yeah, we've got a Facebook user that says one way to change your environment is to ask why. Why do I believe this? Why am I responding this way? Why is the narrative trying to get me to do this thing? When we continually explore the why, we become aware of the what that drives us. The thought process you use to explore your space will actually affect the environment and the structure you create.
That's a very, very good thought. Thank you. Yeah, we're in charge of all of this. We can be anybody we want to be. We can be the very, very best version of ourselves. And it all comes back to looking at each of the environments individually and saying, how can I improve this environment so that it conforms more to what I would prefer to experience or to live in? For example, you mentioned the chemicals that people use to use in their home to put different fragrances in. A lot of those are just chemicals that are really unhealthy, but there are essential oils and there are things that have natural aromas that enhance your mood and the environment that you're in, but it's healthy instead of unhealthy. And so if you start to look in depth into these different areas and environments, you can find something better. I want my house to smell nice, but instead of this chemical, I'm going to use essential oils. I'm going to do it this way because this is what I prefer. If I'm going to eat the food, I don't want 30 chemicals to make it taste better. I want to learn how to use herbs and spices so that my food is really tasty the natural way. That's how I prefer to live. I want my water to be pure. I don't want fluoride in my water, fluorine. Uh, we can make those kinds of choices in everything that we do. So the idea is to create the life that you want to live. Be in control of your environments. Make the decisions. It's not a spectator sport. It's you have to be a participant. You have to be on the team to really make changes. Community level, state level, federal level. Contact your congressman. Get a hold of people in your community that want to say, we don't want business in here. We don't want neon signs. We don't want stoplights. We want a rural community. This is how we want to live. You can make all of those kinds of choices, but you have to be involved.
Well, and I appreciate you sharing this concept with us today because it sounds like it's not a once and done, but an ongoing lifestyle to kind of mold the world that we live in that, as you say, creates an environment that is supportive and healthy and happy and promotes the wellness and the best version of yourself. So I want to thank you today for joining us. I want to thank everybody that joined us in the comments. We got some great comments in here. We got a comment that I wanted to throw out at you real quick. Michael Brown says, our family loves both of your books. So thank you, Michael, for supporting the books and for supporting the show. We are so glad that you guys joined us. And we will join you again next week when we're going to talk about another idea and insight from the wisdom of Omuugn. Thanks for joining.